Mark, first thing I would like to ask you is you're giving this big concert on the 13th at Carnegie Hall, and that was for winning the American Music Competition. How much thought did you put into the program, and how much American music was going to be on it, and how much standard repertoire, etc.?
Well, a couple of those questions are moot. First of all, the fact that some American was going to be on it, I naturally assumed this to be a requirement, but since I had wanted to play the Concord Sonata for years, and for a very important concert, it's a piece that I've been known for quite a while, and I just thought an occasion like this would be perfect, to really expose it and play something that I really love. And it just happened to fit the occasion, so that's why I did it.
Now, what about the other repertoire? You originally, I think, had another program in mind for the second half.
A slightly more audacious one.
Correct.
I originally planned to play the Alcan piano solo concerto for the second half, which is really quite ambitious. And for something like this, if you really don't have the right instrument, it may very well fall apart. Because it's really much more effective and also playable, let's be frank, on a period instrument. But I think that the choice I eventually made, I think compensates, and I'm really just as happy with it. Because it's repertoire that's very slightly off the wall, let's say, and that's one of the things I really go for. I am very much interested in things that are not often heard, simply for a breath of fresh air. And I really don't play repertoire that's not often heard just for that sake. It really has to make a strong emotional impact on me before I do anything with it, before I decide to make it my own.
I think many people would be afraid to play the Concord Sonata in a big concert in Carnegie Hall because they would fear audience reaction to it. How do you see the audience reacting to a piece like the Concord Sonata?
I figure that if I can't play it here, I won't be able to play it anywhere. It's as simple as that. I mean, this is the country, the city to play it in. I mean, that's the way I feel.
Did you think at all about playing any of your own music on this program, because you are also a composer?
Well, at the moment, what is ready to play, and because my compositional activities are still rather at an early stage, I would say, and what I have is a little bit maybe too slight to include it, and I think that all of the works, every single one of the works in the program would have really crushed it to death. Whatever little piece of mine I might have included in there, but maybe perhaps as an encore, one never knows.
So I have to assume then by your previous statement that for you being a pianist came first and your interest in composition came later.
Yes, but it came relatively early. I started playing around, studying around 5, at the age of 5 as a matter of fact, and the real interest, although I was known to scribble, fill out pages of manuscript paper when I was a kid, came around, I don't know, I was 12 or 13 maybe. I guess it's really rather early in any case.
How do you find time to divide up your interests when it comes to this? Because I know you as someone who, in addition to your compositional and pianistic activities, actively seeks out unusual repertoire, unusual music, and you're a very interested sheet music collector. How do you find time? When do you find time to write?
I really don't think about it. When I have a good idea, I write it down. And sometimes it does happen that I will have a very good idea, no paper to write it on, so I'll lose it. That's when good long train trips come in handy. I remember writing I'm engaged right now in writing a series of rather elaborate piano etudes really. And one of them, which was a transcription, which is much easier to do than an original composition, was written in what was practically a single plane trip from Philadelphia to San Francisco.
Hmm.
That was an incredible day for me. I mean, this whole flood of creativity just pouring out. I hope I'm able to repeat the experience, but it happens maybe once in 5 years.
Most of your compositions are for solo piano, I guess, so far.
Well, I really believe in writing for an instrument that one knows. I've had a few forays in other areas. I think I've essayed a couple of solo violin pieces and a rather offbeat piece for solo piccolo, which is designed more for theatrical presentation at a rather contemporary music recital.
Well, you have aspirations, though, in the future to write orchestral music or...
Yes, at the very least, chamber music I would very much...
Piano concerto, perhaps?
One never knows.
Well,
one never knows how a single idea might develop. Sometimes it's out of our control almost.
I think you find many virtuoso pianists, and you certainly are one virtuoso pianist, writing at some point or another in their careers, and this certainly happened in the 19th century a lot, writing piano concerti, even if they weren't really composers.
I think much less so now.
Probably less so now, but the demands are different.
Yeah.
You find yourself equally comfortable performing contemporary music as, let's say, romantic or classical?
I'd like to think so. Really, I really have no trouble identifying with either. I don't really want to be pretentious in saying that, but I feel rather comfortable in all idioms. At least for myself, speaking for myself.
When playing a contemporary piece, be it the Ives or some of the material you've recorded, I know you've recorded the Volpe battle piece and the Balkan etudes, new etudes, 9 new etudes, I believe.
12.
12, okay. Do you analyze the pieces? Do you go through any sort of structured learning, or is it just in notes?
Never completely at first. I think it's more attractive when it unfolds as you learn it, because the sense of wonder, I think, that you experience is even greater. When you've been playing a certain passage for a while and you realize that there is a very deep analytical connotation in it, and something you'd never noticed. I mean, I think it has more effect then than if you did the whole analytical work before you even started working on the piece.
So you just start reading through it and getting it into your fingers initially.
Yeah. A lot of the first, a lot of these things happen on first reading. The first impression is always very strong analytically, but it's always possible to discover other things. Especially, I think, excuse me, especially when you listen to other performances, which already have that science, that kind of enlightenment that you don't have.
When you won the American Music Competition in 1985, did you have any fears at that time that winning a prize like that would sort of stick you into a pigeonhole as a contemporary music specialist?
Well, I'm going to try my damnedest to get out of it if that's what happened or that's what's happening. I hope not to be pigeonholed because of this, playing the Concord Sonata. Although I guess that's a reasonably common occurrence here in this country, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Reasonably.
Well, but you also played the Ellen Willich Piano Concerto,
yeah.
which was a new piece at the time. You gave it its premiere, its New York premiere.
Yeah, that was a commitment, actually.
That was a commission.
Yeah, and a commitment on my part because being a winner.
Okay, but now what we're saying here is that you've given you will have given as of tomorrow, from the date of this broadcast, you will have given 2 performances in Carnegie Hall in which you will have played very difficult contemporary works or very contemporary works. Yeah. This Willich not being as difficult, I think, for an audience as a Concord Sonata, but certainly a contemporary piece of music written in 1985 or 86, whenever. Would you want to, let's say, go into Carnegie Hall and play an old Liszt recital, an old Chopin recital, or whatever?
No, I like diversification in a single program.
So you would never do that, no matter what?
Not really, but I'm not sure I would play an all contemporary recital either. especially
do you think-
especially at this stage. I think.
Do you think that's a good idea in general to play? I mean, do you?
Well, if you have a strong statement to make, I don't see why not.
No, but for example, do you think an orchestra like the American Composers Orchestra, which plays an entire program of contemporary music every concert, do you think that's a good idea? Do you think that's a good way to integrate contemporary music into the mainstream?
Well, the way they do it, I think it's a marvelous idea because their performances are always top notch. At least whenever I heard.
But would you do it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I might be inclined to do it more later as my convictions grow stronger. But right now, I just don't know.
Let's talk about Gdovski, another
Why?
great interest of both of us. And you just, as another project, aside from your recording on New World, you've just finished recording a record that's going to be issued by CBC, Canadian Broadcast Corporation, of various Gdovski works. When did the interest in Gdovski start, and why?
Well, it all comes from my father's own interest. I think he initially got the Gdovski bug from reading Harold Schoenberg's book, The Great Pianists. And what Schoenberg said was intriguing enough for my father to investigate. And I think the first piece of sheet music he ever got was the Gdovski's transcription of the Albanian tango. At the time, Gdovski's sheet music was rather hard to get in Montreal, but then he discovered that a lot of it was stored somewhere in a dusty corner, which indicates people's interest in him at the time. Not that it's any greater today.
No, actually, I think it is, but...
Well, I would like some evidence of that. At least his arrangement of the Chopin studies was reprinted a little bit after that, so at least that's good. But, of course, as a youth, I heard these things, very frequently, and as he got more recordings of them, what little they were, I really became very interested. And, of course, especially seeing his own enthusiasm over the things, I of course, became just as enthusiastic about them. And that's one of the things that really stayed all over the years. Of course, not all that Gdovski has written is equally aesthetically valid today. I think all of it shows a wonderful, an astonishing handling of the instrument. But the solo music portion that of his work, I think, could not possibly be revived, or would be revived only with great difficulty under very special circumstances. And I think that's a rather large, and maybe too large a portion of his output. But what he's done with transcriptions, I think, is I'm going to be lynched for this probably, but I personally consider it more complete, a more loving handling of the instrument than either Chopin, Liszt, or Schumann. I know that's blasphemy, but I'm convinced enough to say it over the air. On the air.
For you, and this may come across as a version of the chicken versus egg question, but well, obviously, to play music like Gdovski, not to mention some of the contemporary works you play, requires an ability to get around the keyboard that's better than average, I would say. Certainly in the case of playing Gdovski. And I'm curious, did your facility come as a result of playing this kind of music, or did your facility come first and allow you to explore these avenues?
Well, whatever facility I might have, I attribute to the fact that I was in fact born with a very, very, very reliable and serviceable ear. And even though it might not be apparent at first, I think everything else, believe me, stems from that.
So you don't feel that the digital elements are as important as being able to hear what you're doing.
Well, I mean, of course you have to develop muscularity, but I believe, at least in my case, and of course it's hard to say this after the fact, because I might not have trained necessarily that way, but if the brain works, the fingers, I think the fingers will.
Mm. You practice technical exercises a lot and things like that?
Sure.
You do?
You never finish doing that. I still do scales like
Do you really?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
As almost every day.
There is a school of thought, of piano technique, that says that once you have the concept of how a scale should sound in your mind, there's no need to practice it anymore.
Well, I think it's always refreshing. I think, of course, scales are wonderful. You know, they're used to develop digits, but I think they're also invaluable in giving your mind and making an imprint in your mind of the personality of each key. And I think that's something that's a little overlooked.
Do you write with key personalities in mind when you write music?
Well, a certain theme or a certain passage will come to me in a certain key, and
So you'll stick with that. You'll stick with that key. You won't transpose it.
Yeah, I'll write it that way. I had a fugue subject that came to me, and it was in A flat minor, for some reason. It stayed in A flat minor for whatever, however long the fugue was. I think it was 9 pages, and the pages are black with accidentals, but I stuck with it, even though copying it was a real drag.
What future projects do you have in mind? I know you've done this New World disc of the Volcom 12 Etudes and the Volpe Battle Piece. You have the Gdovski record to come out on CBC. What are your plans? You're also playing with Philadelphia Orchestra, the Kirchner's Second Piano Concerto in March, I believe, here in New York.
That's right. And in Philadelphia.
And in Philadelphia. What do you want to do in the future? I know you want to get out of the modern music only.
Yeah. I have that problem in Canada too. I hope to get out of it, because I will be repeating the Carnegie Hall program almost exactly 2 weeks later on the 28th in Montreal at the Pollock Hall at McGill University. And it's going to be my first really big public exposure. I've played there often enough, but never in a very exposed setting. I've given a lot of private concerts over there, and this is going to be my big break, I think. And I've also found, and even before I started, I actually did those recordings, that I really love recording not only the act itself, but also the thought of being able to share some neglected works, that I love. It's really a wonderful feeling.
But are there any specific things that you want to record in the future? Any specific repertoire?
Well, I could name a few pieces, of course, but
go ahead.
Well, some of those things are kind of out of your control sometimes, because they're timing considerations.
From your point of view, never mind the exigencies of the music business, which make these things impossible. But what pieces would you like to record? You feel strongly enough about?
One of the I'm really very much attracted to. This rejoins this is related to the Gdovski idea, but I really have a very soft spot for the turn of the century repertoire. When harmony was in great turmoil. I am head over heels in love with the Busoni piano concerto, for instance. I would love to see that on. It's not vinyl anymore, right? Where are we now?
Usually little silver items.
Yeah, round shaped. I really like the Max Reger Bach variations. I think that's a tremendous piece. Very few people also know that Paul Dukas wrote a fantastic piano sonata, which I don't think is any harder to listen to than any Mahler symphony, for God's sake, and perhaps even easier, because I think it's more straightforward. And I'm also attracted in Mettner, of course, more Gdovski, more Busoni. Never get enough of these things. And other things like Franck,
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and also more contemporary repertoire.
Mm-hmm. Would you want to record something like the Concours Sonata?
Oh, that would be a dream come true. It really would. More than once, if possible.
Well, I hope you have these opportunities. It would be great.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.